Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayanti Diyet. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 1, A Lifetime in Preparation, Chapter 2, College, Marriage and Gandhi's Movement. The call to Swaraj, although covert, attracted virtually all the students and Abhay amongst them. He was especially interested in Gandhi. Gandhi always carried a Bhagavad Gita. He daily read Lord Krishna's holy words and spoke of being guided by the Gita above all other books. Gandhi's personal habits were pure. He abstained from all intoxication, meat eating, and illicit sex. He lived simply like a sadhu, yet he seemed to have more integrity than the begging sadhus Abhay had seen so many times. Abhay read his speeches and followed his activities. Maybe Gandhi could carry spirituality into the field of action. The Gita's truth, Gandhi proclaimed, belonged in a most prominent place, where the Gita not only could be read, but could work for everyone's freedom. And the symbol of that freedom was Swaraj. Nationalist sympathies at Scottish Churches College remained underground during Abhay's years as a student. It was a prestigious school. The student had to study very seriously to obtain a degree there, and he could then look forward to a fine career. To speak openly against British rule and in favor of independence meant to risk being expelled. To lose education and career, only the most rebellious would dare. So the students met undercover and listened to the revolutionary leaders. We want Swaraj, we want independence, our own government, our own schools. Gormohan watched his son with concern. He saw Abhay not as one of the hundreds or millions of instruments meant to change India's political destiny, but as his pet son. His first concern was for Abhay's welfare. While world events moved across the stage of history, Gormohan concentrated on his son's future, as he hoped it would be, and as he had always prayed it would be. He was planning for Abhay to become a pure Vaishnava, a devotee of Radharani. He had taught Abhay to worship Krishna and be pure in character and had arranged for his education. Now Gormohan thought of getting him married. According to the Vedic system, a marriage should be carefully arranged by the parents, and it should take place before the girl reaches puberty. Gormohan had gotten his first daughter married in her 9th year, and his second daughter at 12 years, and his third daughter at 11. When his second daughter was going on 12, Rajni had said, I shall go to the river and commit suicide if you don't get her married at once. In the Vedic system, there was no courtship, nor was the couple allowed to live together during the first years of their marriage. The young girl would begin serving her husband by cooking for him at her parents' house and coming before him to serve him his meal, or by taking part in some other formal exchange. Then as the boy and girl grew to physical maturity, they would become so lovable to one another that they would be inseparable. The girl would naturally remain faithful to her husband, since she would have no association with any other boy as she grew to puberty. So this was the science behind what we call as Bal Vivaha, child marriage. So they grow up liking each other and not thinking of anybody else. And as it said, the girl would remain with her parents even after marriage, and only once she attains puberty, then she would come. In villages, it's still said the Gona. Gona happens later on. But this was the concern, or this was the tradition. And why it was? Because then they would both grow understanding they have a husband or a wife. Not as later on we will read, and also we see now the boys and girls, they don't get married until their late 20s or 30, early 30s. And even that is going down now. Even in India and in bigger cities, metropolis, kids just don't want to get married because just too much hassle. They will like go through the live-in relationship and that's it. But that's not marriage. And that, as Arjun was concerned about Varna Sankar in Bhagavad Gita, and this is what is happening now. And it's very much acceptable. And then people cry, why the society is not functioning properly? Well, this is one of the reasons. Gaur Mohan had many friends in Calcutta with eligible young daughters, and for a long time he had been considering a suitable wife for Abhay. After careful consultation, he finally chose Radharani Datta, the daughter of a Suvarna Vanik family associated with the Maliks. Radharani was 11 years old. After the meeting between her father and Gaur Mohan, both families agreed upon the marriage. Although Abhay was a third-year college student with no income, it was not uncommon for a student to marry, and he would have no immediate financial responsibilities. Abhay didn't appreciate his father's choice of a wife. He had thought of marrying another girl, but in deference to his father, he put aside his reluctance. For the time being, he was living with his family and she with hers. So his marital responsibilities of supporting a family would not be immediate. First, he had to finish college. During his fourth year at Scottish churches, Abhay began to feel reluctant about accepting his degree. As a sympathizer to the nationalist cause, he preferred national schools and self-government over the British institutions. But he could see that as yet no such alternatives existed. Gandhi, however, was calling on Indian students to forsake their studies. The foreign-run schools, he said, instilled a slave mentality. They made one no more than a puppet in the hands of the British. Still, a college degree was the basis of a life's career. Abhay weighed the choices carefully. Gaur Mohan didn't want Abhay to do something he would later regret. He had always tried to plan the best for his son, but Abhay was 23 and would have to make his decision for himself. Gaur Mohan thought of the future. The horoscope said his son would be a great religious preacher at the age of 70. But Gaur Mohan did not expect to live to see it. Still, he had every reason to accept the horoscope as accurate, and he wanted to prepare Abhay. He tried to plan things accordingly, but there was no way to guess what Krishna would do. Everything depended on Krishna, and Krishna was above nationalism, above planning and the laws of astrology, and above the desires of a modest cloth merchant aspiring to make his son a pure devotee of Srimati Radharani and a preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam. Although Gaur Mohan had always allowed Abhay to do what he wanted, he had also carefully guided him always on the path he knew was best. Now, without interfering with Abhay's decision about college, Gaur Mohan set about to arrange good employment for him, regardless of what else might happen. In 1920, Abhay completed his fourth year of college and took the BA exam. Afterwards, with the ordeal of final examinations behind him, he took a short vacation. To fulfill a long-cherished desire, he traveled alone a day's journey by train to Jagannath Puri. Srila Prabhupada, every day of my boyhood, I used to think how to go to Jagannath Puri and how to go to Vrindavan. At that time, the fare was for Vrindavan 4 or 5 rupees, and similarly for Jagannath Puri. So I was thinking, when shall I go? I took the first opportunity to go to Jagannath Puri. He walked along the same broad street where for thousands of years Rath Yatra procession had passed. In the market, shops displayed small carved and painted wooden murtis of Lord Jagannath. Although it was not Rath Yatra season, tourists were purchasing souvenirs, and in the temple they purchased Jagannath Prasadam. In the Jagannath temple, 56 gigantic offerings of cooked rice and vegetables were presented daily in worship before the deities of Jagannath, Balram, and Subhadra. Abhay entered the temple and saw the deities. On a side altar stood the Murti of Lord Chaitanya in a six-armed form, manifesting himself simultaneously as Krishna, Ram, and Sannyasi Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya was famous in Puri, where he had spent the last 18 years of his life, conducting Hare Krishna Kirtan with his followers and dancing ecstatically at the yearly Rath Yatra as the carts were wheeled along the main road, surrounded by thousands of devotees. Lord Chaitanya had danced and swooned in the ecstasy of his intense love and separation from Lord Krishna. Passing over the parade route, Abhay recalled his own childhood pastime, singing and dancing in the street, miniature cart and procession, Jagannath smiling, his father and mother, Radha Govinda. So he remembered everything. Somehow the fame of Lord Jagannath had inspired him as a child, and it had remained within him all these years. When shall I go to Jagannath Puri? His childhood dreaming of Puri and Vrindavan, and his compulsively studying the train tables, scheming since the age of 5 to travel here, were based on more than just a desire to tour Puri's marketplace, and he was not satisfied by once seeing the deity in the noisy, crowded temple. He had been impelled to come to Puri as a pilgrim, and his motive was his devotion to Krishna. Now, nationalism was strongly influencing his life, and he had recently married and was facing the decisions of graduation and career. Yet here he was, hardly more than a boy, walking alone in Puri, where Lord Chaitanya had lived and where Lord Krishna's Jagannath still resided. Abhay relished his break from the pressure of duties in Calcutta. He didn't know how the love he felt for Krishna and Krishna's pilgrimage place would fit into his life. He knew that Krishna was more important than anything else. He was God, the supreme controller, and everyone's inner guide. But there was so much token, superficial service to God. Even the nationalist speakers, although they carried the Gita on their person, were more intent on nationalism than on Krishna. Only those who were sincere devotees knew the importance and attraction of Krishna, people like his father. An odd incident occurred at Puri. Gaur Mohan had given Abhay a letter of introduction to an acquaintance who lived in Jagannath Puri. Abhay went to see him and was well received. When the man was offering him lunch, however, Abhay noticed a small lump within one of the cooking pots. He cautioned his host, who replied, "Oh, it is meat." Abhay was unable to restrain his shock. "No, what is this? I've never taken meat." Abhay looked at his host in astonishment. "I never expected this at Jagannath Puri." Ashamed, his host said, "I did not know. I thought this was the best." Abhay pacified the man, but he put his food aside and took no more meals there. After that, Abhay ate only the Jagannath Prasadam from the temple. So, got to be careful, that's all. Abhay stayed in Puri for 3 or 4 days, wandering around the holy places and visiting the famous Puri seaside with its sparkling beach and strongly pounding surf. Several times he recognized some of the priests from the Jagannath temple as they smoked cigarettes, and he heard of other unsavory activities of the sadhus connected with the temple. What kind of sadhus were those who ate fish with the Jagannath Prasadam and smoked? In this respect, he found Jagannath Puri disappointing. So in this respect. When Abhay returned home, he found his young wife crying. Then he heard how her friends had told her, "Your husband is not coming back." He told her not to worry. There was no truth in the story. He had only gone for a few days and was now back. Although his marriage had only recently begun, Abhay was dissatisfied. Radharani Datta was an attractive young girl, but Abhay had never really liked her. He was thinking maybe a different wife would be better, a second wife, besides this one. In India, it was socially acceptable to marry a second wife. So Abhay decided to take the matter into his own hands. He made arrangements to approach the parents of another girl. But when his father heard about it, he called Abhay and said, "My dear boy, you are eager to take a second wife, but I would advise you not to. It is Krishna's grace that your present wife is not to your liking. Take it as a good fortune. If you do not become too attached to your wife and family, that will help you in your future advancement in spiritual life." There's another way of looking at failed marriages. So if you're not too attached to your wife and family, that will help you in your future advancement in spiritual life. Abhay accepted his father's advice. He wanted to obey his father and he appreciated the saintly viewpoint. But he remained thoughtful, a bit awed by his father's forethought. And he wondered how one day in the future he would be advancing in spiritual life and be grateful that his father had done this. Your future advancement in spiritual life. Abhay liked the idea, reconciled himself to the wife he had been given. Abhay Charan De's name was included in the posted list of students who had passed the BA exams and who invited to appear for their diploma. But Abhay had decided he didn't want a diploma from Scottish Churches College. Although as a graduate he would have a promised career, it would be a British-tainted career. If Gandhi succeeded, India would soon be rid of the British. Abhay had made his decision, and when graduation day arrived, the college authorities learned of his rejecting his diploma. In this way, Abhay registered his protest and signaled his response to Gandhi's call. Gandhi's protest had increased its pitch in recent months. During the war, Indians had remained loyal to the crown in hopes of generating British sympathy towards a cause of independence. So that was the First World War. But in 1919, England had passed a Rowlatt Act to repress the movement for Indian freedom. Gandhi had then called on all Indians to observe a hartal, a day in which people all over the country had stayed home from work and school in protest. Although it had been a non-violent protest, 1 week later in Amritsar, in the public square known as Jallianwala Bagh, British soldiers shot to death hundreds of unarmed, defenseless Indians who had gathered for a peaceful meeting. Gandhi then lost all faith in the intentions of the empire towards India. Calling for complete non-cooperation, he ordered a boycott of everything British, commodities, schools, courts, military honors. And Abhay, in refusing his degree, was moving to align himself more closely with Gandhi's independence movement. But his heart was not in it. Just as he had never given his heart to college studies, to earning a degree, to his wife, so he was reserved about becoming a full-fledged nationalist. Abhay had become inclined towards the cause, but never really convinced. Now, out of school, out of work, caring little for his career, education, or wife, he remained at home. He tried his hand at writing poetry for the occasion of a friend's wedding. He read Srimad Bhagavatam and the latest speeches of Gandhi. He had no immediate plans. Gurmohan had his plans for Abhay, and the college degree had been an integral part of those plans. But Krishna, it seemed, had other plans. The political protest of refusing the Bachelor of Arts degree was more a mark of honor than a social stigma. And Gurmohan did not reproach his son for it. but Abhay still needed to take up some kind of work. Gaur Mohan approached his friend Karthik Bose and asked him to employ Abhay. Dr. Karthik Chandra Bose, an intimate friend, had been the family doctor since Abhay's childhood. He was a distinguished surgeon, a medical scholar, and a chemical industrialist. He had his own establishment, Bose's Laboratory, in Calcutta, where he manufactured drugs, soaps, and other products for the pharmaceutical industry. Dr. Bose was well known throughout India as the first Indian to manufacture pharmaceutical preparations that had formerly been monopolized by European firms. He agreed to accept Abhay as a department manager at his laboratory. Although Abhay knew little of the pharmaceutical industry or of management, he felt confident that by reading a few related books, he could learn what he needed to know. But when this new young man was suddenly given the post of a department manager, several workers became dissatisfied. Some of them were elderly and had been 40 years with the firm. They voiced their dissatisfaction among themselves and finally confronted Dr. Bose. Why had this young man been put in charge? Dr. Bose replied, "Oh, for that position, I needed someone I could trust like my own son. He's signing checks for 40,000 rupees. At that time, 40,000 was a big amount, actually. Very big amount. I could only entrust the person handling of my accounts in that department to him. His father and I are very close, and this young man is known to me practically as my son." Gaur Mohan felt he had done his best. His prayer was that the principles of pure Vaishnavism he had taught his son would stay with him and guide him throughout his life. Gandhi and the cause of Swaraj had disrupted Abhay's college career, and Abhay was still inclined towards nationalism, but not so much for a political motive as for a spiritual vision. So Gaur Mohan was content. He knew the marriage arrangement was not pleasing to Abhay, but Abhay had accepted his explanation that detachment from wife and family affairs would be good for spiritual advancement. And Abhay was showing an inherent disinterest in materialistic affairs. This also did not displease Gaur Mohan. To him, business had always been subservient to his worship of Lord Krishna. He had expected this. Now Abhay had a promising job, would be making the best of his marriage. Gaur Mohan had done what he could, and he depended on Krishna for ultimate result. Gandhi, bolstered by his emergence as a leader among the Congress party, now openly attacked the empire's exploitative cloth trade with India. England was purchasing raw cotton from India at the lowest prices, manufacturing it into cloth in Lancashire mills in England, and then selling the monopolized cloth at high prices to the Indian millions. Gandhi's propaganda was that India should return to making her own cloth, using simple spinning wheels and handlooms, thus completely boycotting the British-made cloth and attacking an economic base of Britain's power over India. Traveling by train throughout the country, Gandhi repeatedly appealed to his countrymen to reject all foreign cloth and wear only the simple, coarse khadi produced from India's own cottage industry. Before the British rule, India had spun and woven her own cloth. Gandhi argued that by breaking the cottage industries, the British were sinking the Indian masses into semi-starvation and lifelessness. To set the example, Gandhi himself worked daily at a primitive spinning wheel and wore only a simple, coarse loincloth and shawl. He would hold meetings and ask people to come forth and reject their imported cloth. On the spot, people would throw down heaps of cloth and he would set it ablaze. Gandhi's wife complained that the khadi was too thick and not convenient to wear while cooking. She asked if while cooking she could wear the light, British-made cloth. "Yes, you're free to cook with your milk cloth on," Gandhi had told her, "but I must exercise a similar freedom by not taking the meal so prepared." The course of cottage industry appealed to Abhay too. Okay. He too was not enamored with the modern industrial advances the British had introduced in India. Not only was simple living good for the long-term national economy of hundreds of millions of Indians, as Gandhi was emphasizing, but to Abhay it was also the way of life most conducive to spiritual culture. Abhay put aside his mill-manufactured cloth and took to wearing khadi. Now his dress revealed him to whomever he met, British and Indian alike. He was a nationalist, a sympathizer of revolution. To wear khadi in India in the early 20s, the 1920s, was not a mere clothing fad. It was a political statement. It meant he was Gandhian. Okay, I guess we can stop here. See anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.